Welcome to the CURES digital show and podcast. I'm Kara Sundlin. Today's episode is sponsored by the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services here in Connecticut. Well, today we're talking about brain scans and how these so-called Spect scans could actually maybe help you manage ADHD, depression, anxiety, other neurological conditions. Joining us now is Dr. Jay Faber, who's a clinical and forensic psychiatrist at Amen Clinics. Amen Clinics treats mental health in a holistic way. So welcome, doctor.
Thank you for having me, Kara.
You know, this might be a new concept to folks, but what exactly is a Spect brain scan and how does it help in treatment?
Yeah, so a Spect scan looks at blood flow to the brain. We look at where there's just the right amount of blood flow, kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, too much blood flow, and then too little blood flow. And with that, especially areas where there's too little or too much blood flow, we can target focused treatment to those neuroanatomic areas to help the brain function at a much higher level. Much different than, say, an MRI where you're looking at the structure of the brain. This takes a deeper dive and gives us an idea how well those cells are functioning. The cells might look good on the outside, but it's really inside what's going on that helps.
Right, and I think we even have a picture so I can show people if we can put that up there. And for those of us who are watching, this is taken from your Amen Clinic website. So you can see all different colors, but I guess what you end up doing is, maybe the proof is in the pudding, is after you have these scans, you can target treatment, but then you have people take scans again and you notice that there are changes in their brain?
Yeah, so the whole notion now of neuroplasticity is alive and well. And the good news is we can actually help the brain rehabilitate and heal. 30 years ago, we thought once neurons were present, if anything happened to them, we're kind of done. We lost them. But now we're seeing there's actually things we can do to help those neurons either rekindle their axons or actually regenerate and put new neurons in those places. So it's very exciting times in neuroscience.
Yeah, so let's talk about a common problem. A lot of parents might be dealing with their kids or even struggling themselves, but ADHD, it's a diagnosis that we're hearing more and more about, and kids can really struggle in school. How would this type of Spect scan help the diagnosis process and the treatment process for ADHD?
Well, we used to think of ADD on more of a sort of a single tier level, where if you couldn't focus, you'd go see a pediatrician, a child psychiatrist, adult psychiatrist, get put on a stimulant and keep your fingers crossed things get better. A lot of times things did get better, but there was actually a lot of other times when things didn't get better, and then sometimes things got worse. And so what we found out, there's not one area, our prefrontal cortex, which is a big area for focus issues, that's a problem. But there's several areas within the brain where if you get too much or too little blood flow, it can cause focusing problems. And so what we've been able to do is look at those other areas, and then rather than use a stimulant, we can use either a supplement or medication, depending on the case, to help those areas work much more effectively.
Yeah, and I know you're not, Dr. Amen, who founded the clinics, is a medical doctor, is a psychiatrist, so you do use regular prescription drugs as well, but sometimes you're going to add in supplements that I think perhaps that's what separates you, is maybe a regular psychiatrist wouldn't be as trained in that. Talk about some of the supplements that maybe would be a first line of defense that you would try a little bit to see, to notice some clinical differences with focus and attention.
I'll give you some crazy names, and we can do a deeper dive if you want into them. But things like green tea, ginseng, ashwagandha, rhodiola, DMAE, pycnogenol, Relora, taurine, GABA, just to name a few.
Yeah, and this is the thing, is we often go out there. I'm fortunate enough because I do this show and I'm a big fan of holistic medicine. You know, I work with a skilled provider who said, hey, let's try something called Adrenal Assist. And I know it's got GABA, and I know it's got vitamin B, and I know it's got all these things. And I notice it. I notice it if I don't take it too. So I can feel it working, and you don't have sometimes the negative side effects that you can have with other things. But if you are just going to the store, is it okay for people to try something like, okay, I'm having a lot of trouble with anxiety, so I've heard GABA is good for that. Can I just buy some GABA?
Yeah, I mean, there are supplements and there's not a prescription, so you can certainly try them and see if they don't help. I would also add that you might want to work closely with a physician, because there could be other areas of your brain that are causing anxiety problems besides the basal ganglia, which is typically where the GABA helps. So
And this is where so many times we've dealt with mental health, and it's kind of been a guessing game over the last, generation or so. I think you have this, I think you have that. You might get different answers if you go to different therapists. So is this where your clinic's perspective is a little bit different in that I know Dr. Amen has said that before psychiatrists were the only medical profession that didn't have some sort of a scan to document who they were treating on. So is this where maybe some of the guesswork gets taken out, where you can see the scan and target treatment so you're not guessing as much?
Yeah, I mean, the more senses you can use, the better we're able to make and formulate a good opinion. I mean, if you go to a restaurant and you get something to eat, it's nice to smell it, it's nice to taste it, but you want to see it too. You want to make sure what you're eating is, healthy, wealthy, and good for you. So psychiatry, just historically, we haven't been able to do some of the invasive techniques other individuals have to get things checked. So if you have or non-invasive things, I guess, too, but if you're having heart problems, you get an EKG, you can do an ultrasound. There's been tests done to really look deeper into those organs. The brain, the only thing we could really do is either a spinal tap to look at the spinal fluid, which is in the indirect way, or get a tissue sample of the brain. Now, who's going to go through something like that? Now, with neuroimaging, Spect scans is what we do, but there's fMRIs I think are coming, PET scans. We're learning what's going on with the brain with these instruments, and then take that information, that data, and translate it into something meaningful that's healing and rehabilitating for people's brains.
Now, I know people can go to Amen clinics, and there's one in New York. There's several, throughout the United States, and you do treat people remotely. So that's an option people could go. But what if you if you're working with your own doctor, can you say, I want a Spect scan, or how would you get one?
If you want to get a Spect scan, anyone can get a Spect scan unless you've got something medically going on, and we typically don't do people below age 5. So you could go to our website, www.amenclinics.com, and take a look there. And we have our 1-800 number. That would be a place to start, and then call, and we could get that ball rolling from there.
If people are already working with a mental health professional, say, do other mental health professionals utilize this technology as well? Or it's pretty much something that I know Amen Clinics has really been the pioneer in it, but if you're seeing your regular doctor and asked about it, would that be okay? Or they probably would say, no, I don't do that.
I would say some would say yes, but it really depends on the training. Traditional residency training hasn't offered neuroimaging just because the technology and the data wasn't there. Now, my opinion is I think you're going to see that change. Why? 2017, the Association of Radiology had a whole journal dedicated to psychoradiology, so a completely different term. I would say in our journals, the American Journal of Psychiatry, biological psychiatry, you're going to see anywhere from 30 to 80, 90% of the articles on neuroimaging. Mm-hmm. So it's the wave of the future. It's here.
It's the wave of the future. Well, I love the premise that, you're not stuck with the brain you were born with. So especially if you have children and you're trying to help them, this is an exciting time in that some of these supplements, you're noticing huge changes in folks if it's done correctly.
Yeah, there's two answers to that question. One is, let's say you have a child who's having a difficult time focusing. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but if your temporal lobes aren't working so well and you're more prone to get frustrated or irritable or angry, and you go on supplements like a Relora or magnesium glycinate, taurine, which we talked about a little bit earlier this morning, they help calm that part of the brain down. So you're actually able to focus longer. So that's sort of phase one. But phase two, you think of the resilience and the character strengths that come from being able to tolerate some discomfort. Let's face the facts, homework's not always fun to do, or other avenues of life, depending on what you're practicing. This helps you be able to stay in an unpleasant moment and then master it so you can become not only a stronger brain, but actually a stronger body and brain individual who can function at a higher level in society.
I know, like the founder of JetBlue has said that he wouldn't have been able to found JetBlue if he didn't have ADHD. And there are, plenty of famous people who say that my out-of-the-box thinking, it helped me create this thing that now everyone loves. So we do, I think, need to look so much at the strengths of some of these neurodivergent characteristics. But I do want to go back to some of those supplements because I know you said you could take a deeper dive. Let's just say you mentioned the frustration, the low frustration tolerance, or maybe you're an adult and you're having some brain fog. But let's start with, you talked about taurine, and it's not as rare as we might think. You said we might be even having taurine a lot in energy drinks right now.
Right. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about this earlier this morning, but if you go to your local gas station, supermarkets, go to the energy drinks, you'll see most of them have taurine, and people come to my office and say, well, these are the energy drinks. Why are you trying to jack me up? I'm nervous. And if you look at the energy drinks, there's about 250 to 300 milligrams of caffeine in there, which is about 2.5 times more of the caffeine you're supposed to have. So back in the old days when the energy drinks first came out, people would have them, and you look at individuals after one or maybe two drinks and they're like this. So one of the energy drinks said, well, let's do this. Let's put some taurine in and see if it makes a difference. So the taurine started going into the energy drinks, and this one company in particular was selling them off the roof. I mean, California, which is where I'm from, and when something's a trend, believe me, it takes off. You couldn't find those energy drinks anywhere. Now, the companies who were out there who didn't have it were like, what's going on? They had no idea. And so they had to put their research together. And now they all put taurine in their drinks to calm you down. So now you can have the caffeine effect where you're focused, but now you're not doing this. It's like you're in Zen. Now, I'm not saying drink 250 milligrams of caffeine because it's not good.
Yeah.
But the taurine, it's huge. And the best way I can describe it for those out there, it doesn't make you tired. It doesn't make you sleepy. But let's say you have to remember 5, 6 things, think of the strengths and weaknesses. Yep. For people whose temporal lobes aren't working well, it's kind of like looking at those 6, 7 things like this. And then you try to grab one, and it's like, it's just hard. The taurine will help things move, but it's more rhythmic.
Okay.
And in motion, so you can follow it. It's almost like dancing.
Well,
you're in Zen.
Yeah, and so if you've done, if your child hasn't done any testing and they've said perhaps there's poor working memory, or you're really good at this, but there's too much. So is that what you're saying? It kind of helps with the function of the brain so you can remember better things and you can be more effective in school and work?
Yeah, I mean, our temporal lobes just in general, they learn by seeing, right? It's like when you're reading, you see the words. The people who read well, they'll look at the words and take it a step farther and use their imagination to see that object. It's when we can do that, we remember, we understand better. So the taurine helps that whole process get to a level where you're able to learn at a much more deeper and profound level.
So I know that Amen Clinics has its own brand of BrainMD, different supplements and all. I think so many people want to do supplements, but they don't want to waste their money. They don't want to take the wrong thing. They don't know if it's okay, if they can take it with, maybe they're already taking a prescription medication. I guess it's very personal, but what do you recommend? Do you have to go to, say, one of your doctors to figure, or a naturopath or someone who really understands herbs? Or can you start with something? Like, what would be, if you want to try and see if this is going to help you?
This would be my recommendation. The first thing I would do, go spend $6.95 to I think $10.95, get Dr. Amen's book, Healing ADD. And he talks about the 7 different types of focusing issues we see.
Yep.
And when you read them, and if one of them connects with you, then look at the recommended supplements for it. And then I would start there.
And you can try it, and you notice. How long does it take for more natural supplements to feel it?
Depends which one it is and where it's affected. Taurine, I've seen changes within a week. GABA for our basal ganglia, which calms us, I've seen changes within a week. If you're having more frontal lobe issues and you want to use supplements, that could take anywhere from a month, 2 months, 3 months to see effects. So it really depends on the supplement and the region of the brain that's not working so well.
If kids are taking stimulants and it's helping them, or adults for that matter, can they incorporate supplements to enhance them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We see, and again, it's like when people come in and they're on stimulants and they're telling me, what's your focus problem? It's kind of like an Eskimo who knows different types of snow. We'll ask questions like, when you try to focus, what's it like? If you're distracted, you're jumping from topic to topic, think frontal lobes, think stimulants. If you're daydreaming, you're focusing, but you're not focusing on what I'm supposed to be focused on. There we think more anterior cingulate and think of supplements that support serotonin physiology, anything from 5-hydroxytryptophan to St. John's wort, that's one most people have heard of, to saffron. I mean, saffron, we're seeing like lots of data coming out. So,
okay, so there's so much out there, and you know, I guess it's the new frontier of how people can do this. Are these types of treatments covered by insurance?
The treatments at our facility, for the most part, if they're covered, it's not as much as we'd like to see. Okay, we can give you the paperwork for insurance to fill out, but I think by and large, you're going to be paying a bigger proportion out of pocket than you would at your other primary care provider or psychiatrist office in your insurance plan.
Yeah, so it just depends. And now, if you have an FSA account and people want to try and get a scan, then will those usually work?
If you've got, I'm sorry, an FFA?
Those healthcare spending accounts, or flex
spending
spending
that would
accounts.
be something different. You should be able, I believe, with that.
Yeah.
That's your money saved away. So that would be something.
It would count as a medical procedure. You know, we can buy sunglasses and over-the-counter medicine and all that. No, I mean, it's so much to go into, but in a short period of time. But basically, it's interesting to see that, and I'm familiar with Dr. Amen's work. I follow him on Instagram and just all the little snippets he gives. But it's, I guess for you, for someone who's doing this, it's proof is in the pudding. You actually watch, and over a period of time, you see the brain heal in the scan.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when I first started working there, it's like there wasn't much research on what did before and after pictures look like. And when you see some of the differences, I think notably, especially in head trauma patients or substance abusers too, if they do what we request and follow through, it's amazing at the changes we see.
Well, Dr. Faber,
which is really encouraging.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us and telling us a little bit. I know for some people, they probably never heard of a Spect scan. So I also want to encourage people to go watch Dr. Amen's TED Talk on it. They can go to your website. I think it's amenclinics.com. Do I have that right?
www.amenclinics.com.
All right, Dr. Faber, thank you so much for being with us and sharing this important information.
Kara, thank you for having me on. Have a good day.
You too. And if you want more information on the cutting edge of wellness, you can go back and watch other CURES episodes right here on WFSB Plus, or listen on the CURES podcast. We cover lots of fascinating information and try and give you the cutting edge information from the greatest minds right now. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day and be well.